We're back for your ears only. I'm Melissa Exelberth.
I'm David Alpern with this quote from the news. No court has ever taken this topic this seriously or put in this kind of effort. That was Gary Wells, professor of psychology at Iowa State University, on the wider impact of a New Jersey Supreme Court ruling requiring reform of traditional eyewitness identification procedures, which have sent many innocent people to prison. The U.S. Supreme Court will consider the issue for the first time since 1977 in November. Now this.
One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
Hurricane Irene delayed formal dedication of the new Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial on Washington's National Mall, originally scheduled exactly 48 years after King's famous I Have a Dream speech. But the crowds have already started to come, multiracial and mightily affected by the King quotations carved in its space. Key to the design is King's hope that out of the mountain of despair, a stone of hope would emerge for the struggle he led, though some architecture critics found the design too stony, and King looking less hopeful than severe. The larger question, of course, is how far his struggle itself has come.
To say simply that the United States now has a black president is hardly answer enough, nor is it sufficient to point to people of color in all sorts of positions, public and private, they never held before, or to polls showing that, as King hoped, younger Americans are less concerned with race than their elders. To consider the actual progress and the problems that remain for the nation and its president, for your ears only, we're joined now by Harvard Law professor Randall Kennedy. His best-selling books include Race, Crime, and the Law, Nigger, The Strange Career of a Troublesome Word, and now The Persistence of the Color Line, Racial Politics and the Obama Presidency from Pantheon. Professor Kennedy, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
First, from what you've seen and read about the new King Memorial, what was your reaction to it and the initial public reaction?
Well, I think it's a wonderful monument to a great man, and I'm very happy to see it unveiled and very happy to see it there in the particular setting, paying homage to great American leaders. As for the public reaction, my sense is that Americans of wide variety of backgrounds and various ideological beliefs are appreciative of this memorial, and I think in the years and decades to come, there will be millions and millions and millions of people from all around the world who will hopefully find new inspiration from Martin Luther King Jr.'s career and from his words.
Turning to your new book, The Persistence of the Color Line, in a way, did political correctness and racial sensitivity keep the media and the public from fully understanding the kind of politician Obama was and the kind of president he might make?
I don't think so. I mean, the United States is a big country. People saw him, differently, depending on their ideological vantage. And so, no, I don't think that so-called political correctness stood in the way.
Is it progress of sorts that the economic problems Obama and we now face make the attacks on him more about his competency than his complexion or his citizenship?
The attacks on Obama, there are lots of ingredients in those attacks. Some of them have to do with clashes over policy. Some of them have to do with partisanship. Some of them, though, do have to do with race. It's not the case that racial discrimination, racial prejudice has been erased from American life. It is still very much a part of American life.
Americans of color are among the most hard hit by the current economic crunch, but most analysts think they remain Obama's most reliable base. And you say they admire more than his skin color. Give us your short list.
First and foremost, Barack Obama is was a liberal Democratic senator whose political preferences were preferences that are largely embraced by the great mass of black Americans. On top of that, he is black. And I think that symbolically it meant a great deal to black Americans and other Americans as well.
And not only that, but he called himself black, not mixed race.
That's right. He called himself, he was a guy who was very unequivocal about it. He didn't equivocate. He called himself black, and he said that he wanted to become president of the United States and took actions to make that happen. I think for many black people, it was enthralling to see a black person scale the Mount Everest of American politics.
And what's your reaction to the debate among some black commentators about whether Obama has not been responsible enough to fellow Americans of color?
My view is, that comes with the territory. Black America is large and diverse, and there are all sorts of views. There are some black Americans who criticize Barack Obama from the right. There's some black Americans who criticize Barack Obama from the left. That should not be at all surprising.
But are you disappointed by his preference for compromise over taking strong stands that would buttress his base beyond the color line?
No, not really. I mean, I am critical of the president in certain ways. I do think that he could do more to shape the ideological landscape of the country. I would like him to lean in a more progressive direction. But the President of the United States, any President of the United States, faces it's a tough job, and the politics of the United States are filled with all sorts of people. There are lots of different power bases. The President just can't snap his fingers and have his preferences put into action. I think the President could take a few more steps in the political direction that I favor, but I recognize that, he faces all sorts of dilemmas. He faces all sorts of opposition.
But in the case of Supreme Court nominations in particular, you say Obama did liberals something of a disservice in his rhetoric, even while choosing two liberals. And
I agree. Yes, on that, I'm critical of the president. When the president introduced, for instance, Sonia Sotomayor, he talked about how he wanted to elevate to the Supreme Court jurists who would simply apply the law and not make the law. I viewed that as simply throwing a rhetorical bone to the right in America. I don't think that notion of applying the law versus making the law makes much sense, given that the Supreme Court of the United States is a policy-making branch of government, no matter how people characterize it. There is no sharp distinction between law and politics, particularly at the Supreme Court. So I was very critical of this president for saying that.
What do you think Dr. King would make of today's mix of racial progress and challenges?
I think that Dr. King would take tremendous pride in what the United States has been able to accomplish. And I say that having written a book called The Persistence of the Color Line. Clearly, race is still a problem in the United States. But you always have to ask, compared to what? Compared to other nation states, how are we doing? We are a country that inherited the history of slavery, the history of Jim Crow, the history of massive discrimination. And against that history, the United States of America has elevated to its highest office a black American. That is something that all Americans should take pride in.
Harvard Law professor Randall Kennedy is author of the book Race, Crime, and the Law, Nigger, The Strange Career of a Troublesome Word, and now The Persistence of the Color Line, Racial Politics in the Obama Presidency, from Pantheon.
Quote from the news, "This is all about safety, not about religion." That was Peter Tartaglia, Deputy Commissioner of the Westchester County Parks Department, after an altercation involving Muslim visitors to Rye Playland, which does not allow women wearing headscarves, or any headgear actually, on some rides.
Next, Unexpected, Irene in Vermont, for your ears only.